for a beautiful recitation. Maryam was reciting in the riwayah of Duri an Abu Amr. MashaAllah. Maryam, can you remind me where he's from?
He's from Baghdad, and Abu Amr is from Al-Basra. And the recitation itself is popular in Sudan and East Africa.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khairan. That was awesome. Then, Maryam, is there specifically a furush for أوهن؟ وإن أوهن البيوت لبيت العنكبوت. You can look it up, inshallah. Anyways. So today we're doing the tafsir, which this is juz number 20. So tomorrow we're going to fast the 20th day of Ramadan. SubhanAllah, we're literally one day away from the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So, SubhanAllah, may Allah accept it. It flew by. So juz number 20 is the end of Surah Al-Naml, all of Surah Al-Qasas, and the beginning of Surah Al-Ankabut. And yesterday we talked a little bit in Surah Al-Naml about the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam and Balqis, the queen of Sheba. And I can't remember if I actually already shared this, but I'm a nerd and I'm going to share it again. So there's 3 chapters in the Quran that are named after a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is small enough that you could see a group of it. And we talked about the bees, how that was an example of the believers. And then we talked about, yesterday we started talking about Surah Al-Naml, and also in this chapter we talk about Surah Al-Ankabut. So ants are a very structured society where everybody is specialized. There's farmer ants, there's soldier ants that defend the colony. There's so many different ants that do different things. And ants can live in a colony of up to 1 million ants. They build essentially ant cities, and an ant city of 1 million ants can eat what a cow would eat in a day. So ants are actually, subhanAllah, really, really fascinating creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah. Alhamdulillah. I think, never mind. Ants are amazing. I'm a nerd. Ants are cool. But the reason ants are mentioned in the surah, besides the fact that the ant communicated with the rest of the ants to warn them of an impending danger of Sulaiman alayhi salam and his army coming through and not seeing them and destroying them, we see how consistently communication is used as a form of like having really deep conversations. So at the beginning of the surah, we mentioned the story of Balqis and Sulaiman alayhi salam, and the part where we picked up from the surah was the end of the story of the people of Lut, how after they rejected Lut alayhi salam, their attack against him is that they were people that were purifying themselves. And it's just so fascinating that, subhanAllah, despite their attack against him, how effectively he communicated the purification that we're supposed to go through in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this was the reason that they wanted him banished from the city. And may Allah protect us, and they disobeyed their prophet and their city was destroyed. But then ayah number 59 starts asking this rhetorical question. It says, أَإِلَهٌ Allahu khayrun amma yushrikun? Is Allah better, or what they have associated with him? And of course, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, there is no one that is anywhere near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then the next couple of ayat keep reminding us of this theme. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what about the one that created the heavens and the earth and brought down from the heavens water, and with that water brought out these gardens, and they're beautiful gardens. You could not bring that tree to life. أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ? Can there be a Lord besides Allah? Can there be a God besides Allah, with Allah? بَلْ هُمْ قَوْمٌ يَعْدِلُونَ. No, these are people that deviate from the truth. So one of our fundamental beliefs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He's the creator. The next ayah continues, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, like, what have you associated with Allah? They don't create. They don't have powers. They don't have abilities. The next ayah says, what about the one that made the earth firm and sent rivers and put the mountains and put this barrier between salt water and fresh water? أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ? Can there really be a God with Allah? بَلْ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. In fact, there are people that don't have a lot of knowledge. What about the one who calls on the answer is the dua of the one that is oppressed. When we call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what about the one that actually answers that call and lifts difficulties? And He made us stewards of the earth. أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ, can there really be a God associated with Allah? قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ, how little you reflect. What about the one that guides you in the darkness on land and in sea, and sends the wind so that you can bushran bayna yaday rahmatih, both to pollinate the food and to have your ships move through the sea? Can there really be a God with Allah? Ta'ala amma yushrikun. Allah is exalted way beyond anything that they have associated with Him. And then the last one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what about the one who's created creation in the first place and will bring it back? And the one who sustains you from both the heavens and the earth. أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ, can there be a God with Allah? قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring your evidence if you are telling the truth. If you are saying that this is what it is, then come back and prove it. SubhanAllah. Such beautiful, powerful ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just showing us our signs all over us, all around us, subhanAllah. The end of the surah concludes with a command to the Prophet ﷺ, إِنَّمَا أُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَعْبُدَ رَبَّ هَذِهِ الْبَلْدَةِ الَّذِي حَرَّمَهَا وَلَهُ كُلُّ شَيْءٍ. I've been commanded to worship the Lord of this city, meaning Mecca, because that's where He was, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and this was a Meccan surah, this is when it was revealed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that sanctified it, and everything belongs to Him, and I've been commanded to be the first of the Muslims, and to recite the Quran. Whoever is guided for himself, and whoever is misguided, then the Prophet ﷺ's job is just to warn us. If we are misguided, may Allah protect us from that, then we have no one to blame but ourselves. The last ayah says, وَقُلِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ, say Alhamdulillah, that Allah will show us our signs so that we can know them. وَمَا رَبُّكَ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not unaware of what we do. Subhanallah. Then we have Surah Al-Qasas. And I like to talk about Surah Al-Qasas a lot, so if you've heard this a million times, I apologize. It's also a Meccan surah, and it was revealed towards the end of the life of the Prophet, and towards the end of the time of the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca. And all the way at the end, so yeah, there's an ayah at the end that we'll mention. So this, actually the surah tells the narrative of Pharaoh and the narrative of Musa. So the ayah that it's named after is when Musa alayhi salam gets to Madian. It says, فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَصَ قَالَ نَجَوْتَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. So when he gets to Madian and he repeats the story, this is ayah number 25, that part is the reason the surah gets the story that it gets the name that it has. And we mentioned that Qasas is something you repeat again and again and again. So it's a narrative and a story that you carry in your head. And we talked about how the narrative of Pharaoh is summarized in ayah number 4, where he divides people into groups. He convinces them that they are different from each other, and then he oppresses one of the groups. And at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when they're receiving this revelation, the groups were based on your tribe. So who your family was, who your father was, who your mother was your value in society. And those were the lines that people drew in the Meccan society at that time, in the Arabian society at that time. Now we live in a society that is divided based on race. And this is what we need to fight against to make so that we all understand that in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are all just human beings. And the differences between us we're just a subgroup of a larger group. So the word Shia is a group with a distinct identity. He convinced them they were different. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and continues the ayah and says, in fact, they are just a group of a larger group. It starts off with the story of Musa alayhi salam with his mom, and the anguish of his mom because her son is now born in a year where Pharaoh is killing all of the male children that are born that year. All of the babies that are born that year, if they're male, they are killed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to her that to protect her son, to put him in a basket and to put him in the river. And she tells his younger sister to follow the basket to see where it goes. And she follows it, and sure enough, she sees it go straight into the palace of Pharaoh. And they take him in, and it was the wife of Pharaoh, Sayyidah Asiyah alayhi salam, who is mentioned, subhanAllah, in the Quran as an example for the believers, and also mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ as one of the greatest women that ever walked the face of the earth. She's married to the most horrible tyrant. And she was an incredible human being. And she sees Musa alayhi salam and she says, قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ. Let's us take him in. Let's not kill this one. Let's spare this child. And subhanAllah, in fact, the Pharaoh agrees, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spares the life of Musa alayhi salam through the action of Sayyidah Asiya. And of course, this is the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was his will to begin with. SubhanAllah. And then his sister comes in and they keep trying to send him to different moms to nurse him, and he refuses every single one of them. Until his sister's like, I know someone that could maybe do it. And she says, هل أدلكم على أهل بيت? I can tell you about a family. And subhanAllah, Musa alayhi salam is returned to his mom so that she can feel calm. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, He answers the call of that mom. He answers her dua. SubhanAllah. Which is really, really beautiful, that even in the midst of all of this, there's going to be a political change, and there's going to be this, and there's going to be that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't forget the mother's heart that is at the center of it. He walks through the city one day, and because he's returned to his mom, he knows who he is. And the Egyptian society at the time, the Egyptians were the ones that were empowered, and Bani Israel were enslaved in Egypt. And they were treated less than human. And he walks through the city, and even though Musa alayhi salam is originally from Bani Israel, because he grew up in the house of Pharaoh, he is the most privileged among them. And he walks through the city. This is when he's come of age. He's a young man, and he sees these two men fighting. One of them is an Egyptian, and one of them is from Bani Israel. And just seeing the setup of that, the way that society is structured, the guy from Bani Israel doesn't have much of a chance. If he dies, there will be no accountability. And if the Egyptian dies, it's going to be the end of the world. And Musa alayhi salam is just trying to defend the man that he sees as vulnerable, and he pushes the Egyptian man. But because Musa alayhi salam is so strong, he pushes him and the man falls and dies. And Musa alayhi salam is saying, Ya Allah, I don't want to become one of the oppressors. My goal was not to just to replace one kind of tyranny with another kind of tyranny. That wasn't my goal. And he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the next day he again goes in, and that same dude that was fighting with someone the day before is now fighting with someone new. And Musa alayhi salam's like, dude, you're just a troublemaker. And he goes to try to defend him again, but the man thinks that Musa's going to attack him instead. And he outs Musa alayhi salam, and he says, do you want to kill me like you killed someone yesterday? And he outs Musa alayhi salam. There was a murder that happened, and there was a body, and they didn't know who did it. And now he outed Musa as the person that did it. And there was a man that came from the court of Pharaoh, and he came and he ran to Musa alayhi salam, and he said, look, the verdict is that they're going to kill you. You have to get out. And it's important to note that it was a man from his tribe, from Bani Israel, that sold him out. And it was a man from Egypt that should have had all of the privilege in the world, that risked his life to save Musa alayhi salam's life. And it's important to know that, because in the same way that Pharaoh divided people into groups, if we're internalizing racism, we're accepting the system of Pharaoh. And it's important for us as believers to reject that system and to not buy into it. But it's also, even as we're rejecting it, we don't reject people morality is not owned by a race or a group. You could have people from the vulnerable group act in a way that is immoral, and people from the privileged group act in a way that is very moral. And vice versa. At the end of the day, every human being has the opportunity to be moral or immoral. He runs away from the city. He goes to a place called Madian. He sees these two young women that keep pulling their animals back. Everybody's going to get their animals to drink water, and these two women keep pulling their animals back. So he goes and he's like, he asks them, what's happening? And they tell him, look, that there's a large crowd. We don't want to push and shove against the men. So we're just going to wait until till the crowd dies down, and then we'll take our animals. Also, strange man who we don't know, our dad's a big deal in this town. Just letting you know. SubhanAllah. He takes their animals and he takes them to drink the water. And there's a huge boulder that's blocking everyone. And SubhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with physical strength. And he was able to push the boulder and open up more space for people to have their animals drink. He has their animals drink, and then he brings them back, and he goes and he sits under a tree. He doesn't come back and be like, I'm the one that helped you, and I need to get paid because I don't know anybody in this town and I'm hungry. he would have been within his rights to do that, but he didn't, because that wasn't the character of the prophets. Subhanallah. So he went and he sat under a tree and he said, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. He's saying, Ya Allah, whatever blessings you can give me, I'm in need of all of it. Subhanallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends one of the two women back to speak to him, and she tells him, look, our father wants to thank you. And he goes and he meets her father. And wallahu alam, there's an opinion that says that it was Shu'aib, another prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahu alam, whether it was Shu'aib or someone else, or it was a wise man. And he tells him the story, and he tells him, you have survived. You have survived the system of oppression. You are fine now. And he helps him on his farm, and he farms the earth for 10 years. And he ends up marrying the young woman that complimented him to her dad, where she says, hey dad, this guy is trustworthy and physically strong. And her father understands that she is in fact interested in him, and he tells him, I want you to marry one of my daughters. And he does marry one of Shu'aib's daughters, and he lives there for 10 years. And he's outside of Egypt for 10 years to be able to see himself as a human being who gets married, who farms the land, who is not part of that system of oppression anymore. And after 10 years, that is the healing that he needed, and he's now returning to Egypt, and that's the point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls on him. Inside Sinai, next to this mountain of Tur, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls on Musa alayhi salam, and he converses with him for the very first time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gives him specific signs to take back to the people of Pharaoh, and he tells him, go back and do da'wah to the man that tried to kill you. And Musa alayhi salam says, can you send my brother with me? Because Harun is more eloquent. Can you send him with me? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts the dua of Musa alayhi salam, and in fact sends his brother Harun with him. They go back to Pharaoh. And the story here, in this surah, there are other points where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elaborates on what happened with Pharaoh, but here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying his narrative is so stupid, it doesn't even deserve mentioning. That Musa alayhi salam went back, told Pharaoh about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Pharaoh just disbelieved. And the part where it actually talks about Pharaoh, it's saying that he didn't guide his people. He misguided them, and he led them to a horrible afterlife. May Allah protect us from that. The surah is now addressing the people, after it finishes the story of Musa alayhi salam, addresses the people of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where they would say certain things to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where they told him, in ayah 57, they told him, قالوا إن نتبع الهدى معك نتخطف من أرضنا. They told the Prophet ﷺ, if we follow you, we're going to lose all of our privilege, and we're going to lose this system that we built up, and we're going to lose all of this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to them, it says, wasn't it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who gave it to you in the first place? How do you think that obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make you poorer instead of richer? That would make you lose more instead of gaining more? Subhanallah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is consistently reminding them of his favors, in the same way that there's a lot of racism in our society that is justified by economic insecurity. And they're like, oh, it's not that we hate other people, it's just that we don't want them to take our jobs. And it's those evil people over there, instead of looking back at the system and saying, why was it set up this way that some people can survive and some people can't? Subhanallah, may Allah protect us from that. The end of the surah tells the story of Qarun, who was a man from the people of Musa alayhi salam. He is from Bani Israel, and he was so rich. Even the description says that just the keys to his treasures were so heavy, it would take lots and lots of strong men to carry them. That's how insanely rich this man was. And he comes out in all of his like his fancy car and his this, and he's coming out in and he's just displaying his wealth. And the people that have the scholars of his time told him, look, take from the dunya. Like, no one's telling you don't have any part of the dunya, but don't forget your akhirah. Don't forget that this life is an investment for the next one. And he says, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ. No, in fact, you know what? I got this because I'm smart. I worked hard. I am self-made. Such a ridiculous notion. No, you didn't build, even if you built an incredible company, you didn't build the roads that had people come to your company. You didn't build the society around it. And even if You put in blood, sweat, and tears. At the end of the day, there are so many people that put in blood, sweat, and tears and got nothing. It is only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that you would have this money. And it's a trust that we are given for a certain amount of time, and we don't get to waste it. We have to use it for what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was very, very short-sighted. He comes out in all of his grandeur. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the earth to literally open up and swallow him whole. And all the people that wished to be in his place the day before, they're like, oh no, we're really glad we didn't have that. We're really glad the earth didn't open up and swallow us. SubhanAllah, may Allah protect us from that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the end of this ayah, at the end of the surah, reminds us of what's important. And it tells the Prophet ﷺ, don't let anyone وَلَا يُصُدَّنَّكَ عَنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ بَعْدَ إِذْ أُنزِلَتْ إِلَيْكَ. Don't let anything distract you or put up these impediments in front of what the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have sent to you. وَادْعُ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Then call to your Lord and don't associate partners with him. وَلَا تَدْعُ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ. Do not call with Allah any other God. لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ. There is no God except him. كُلُّ شَيْءٍ هَالِكٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهُ. Everything will turn to nothing except the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the moments of the Day of Judgment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroys all of creation. And then he calls out and says, لِمَنِ الْمُلْكُ الْيَوْمِ. Who is the king now? And there is no one to answer him. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Everything all this material, it turns to nothing. لَهُ الْحُكْمُ وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. He is the one that is truly in control, and we're going to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surah Al-Ankabut, we started the surah, and it starts off and it says, حَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people really think that they are going to say we believe and they won't be tested? That their faith won't be tested? If we are saying that we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we should be able to withstand it in thick and thin. And the ayah says, ayah number 10, and it says, and some of the people say we believe in Allah. So if they face any difficulty in the path of Allah, جَعَلَ فِتْنَةِ النَّاسِ كَعَذَابِ اللَّهِ. They say, oh no, what about this and what about that? Instead of saying, look, I was still doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if any success comes from their Lord, they say, we were with you. We were here the whole time. أَوَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَعْلَمَ بِمَا فِي صُدُورِ الْعَالَمِينَ. Sorry. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not the one that is more aware of what is in the hearts of people? At the end of the day, this isn't to prove it to anyone else, this is to prove it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ayah in surah, in this surah that it's named after is ayah number 41, and it says the example of those who have taken protectors besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like the example of the spider. It's made a home, and the weakest of all homes is the home of the spider. When you look at a spider web, you can just move it. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the spider ability to weave this web and to live in it. And yet it's really, really flimsy, you could just move it. And those are whatever it is that you decided to rely on besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may Allah protect us from that. The other part of this that I think is really fascinating is when you look at the social structure of spiders, it's a society that is eating itself from the inside. In the ayah at the beginning, it says, it's in ayah number 8, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we have advised people to treat their parents well. But if they fight you, and jahadaka is like they put in blood, sweat, and tears, so much energy to fight you, to associate partners with Allah, then do not obey them. To Allah you return, and He will tell you what you have done. Your parents are supposed to be the ones that support you the most, and here they are fighting you to destroy your afterlife, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying don't obey them. And this ayah, this surah, I've always found it very healing for people that are in abusive family situations, in situations of domestic violence, because part of that is that you get stuck in a web of lies. And it's really hard to break out of it and understand the truth. And this is why the end of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who keep fighting for our path, we will guide them towards us. We will guide them towards the correct path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah make us all among the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides to His path. Jazakumullah khairan for listening. We'll do a closing dua inshallah and have a discussion. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات تواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. By the token of time, surely mankind is in a state of loss, except for those who believe and do good works and counsel each other truth and counsel each other with patience. Ya Allah, grant us your love, the love of those that you love, and love of everything that brings us closer to your love. Ya Allah, accept our fasting. Ya Allah, accept our prayer. Ya Allah, accept our Ramadan. Ya Allah, accept all of our good deeds. Ya Allah, make the next 10 days the best 10 days of our lives. Ya Allah, make them the greatest worship we've ever had. Ya Allah, grant us all spiritual openings. Ya Allah, accept all of our dua. Accept all of our good deeds. Accept from us Laylatul Qadr. Ya Allah, allow us to see Laylatul Qadr, to be a witness for it. And Ya Allah, accept all of our deeds in that night. Ya Allah, make it one of the best nights of our lives. Ya Allah, accept all of our good deeds. Accept us. Ya Allah, protect us from the fire. Ya Allah, grant us your forgiveness. Grant us your mercy. Grant us your compassion. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, we have no one to turn to besides you. Ya Allah, don't let us turn away without having all of our du'as answered. Ya Allah, give us societies that are healthy, give us families that are healthy, give us companions that are healthy, give us good company in this dunya and in the akhirah. Ya Rabbil Alameen, Ya Allah, protect us from the fitna. And if you choose to test us, Ya Allah, allow us to be purified through it and allow us to get through it safely with our spirit and our souls completely intact. Ya Allah, make the best of our deeds the last of our deeds, and make the best day of our lives the day that we meet you. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, and prayers on your beloved Prophet Muhammad and his family and his companions. Ameen, ameen. Jazakumullah khairan. I realized that I forgot to do our agreed upon dua. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Who has questions, comments, discussion points? Also, Mu'adh, you're right, it is awhan. Anyone have thoughts?
Nothing for me. I'm good.
That's a sign that you either did a great job or a horrible job.
This was beautiful. Jazakallah khairan. One thing that is sometimes I think about is why the surah is called Surah Al-Qasas, which means like multiple stories, when it really just focuses on one story, which is the story of Prophet Musa. So I don't know. I think about that sometimes. I wonder if there is some. It's saying something about how this story is so like it's going to happen a lot. Maybe I don't know. I'm just that's something that strikes me.
It's so multi-layered though. Can you imagine him like walking in, he's like, so what's your deal? He's like, well, I accidentally killed someone. But wait, let me quantify that. I don't go around doing that. And this is the reason I was defending the guy in the first place, and this is what happened, and these are how these people are oppressed, and this is who I am, and this is how this came about, and this is who my mom was, and this was my adoptive mother who protected me. Like, there's just so many layers to the story of him trying to make sense of who he is, I think.
Yeah.
That's also why, like, they tell you to have good mental health. Journaling is really, really interesting because you are essentially writing your own story and trying to make sense of it. And trying to understand all the extra factors that are playing out in your life.
And also, I don't think there's somewhere else in the Quran where we do, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but like where we get to see the entire, like every stage of Prophet Musa's life. like because we literally get the story from the beginning. So that also is part of it, I guess. I just love Surah Al-Qasas so much, like especially the beginning. Like every time I hear it, just the way Allah Subhanahu wa Taala describes just like the mother's feelings, and it just like gets me every time because it's like subhanallah, like Allah is so like He is aware of, like, especially the ayah where it says وَأَصْبَحَ فُؤَادُ أُمِّ مُوسَى فَارِغًا, like that her heart like literally became empty. It's like, I don't know, I just think it's so beautiful. I don't know.
No, I agree, subhanAllah. Such an incredible story. It actually stops, it doesn't continue past the story of Pharaoh. It doesn't continue after they left Egypt, what happened with them. It's almost like a story. It's, sorry, I know I'm gonna be nerd out, but you know how they have like the prequel of like, and this is the origin story, this is how this character came about. I feel like this was the origin story of Musa alayhi salam in the Quran, of like, this is how he became who he was.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
And it's interesting because like we start don't we like we start the Quran by learning about Banu Israel, and it's like this is like the ultimate prequel.
Yeah.
Like another thing I remember learning about or like I so when we went to the spirituality retreat last September, I remember Ustad Ubaidullah Evans talked about the story and talked about like aspects of it, but what I really remember is the what he said about the dua بإني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير, and how the way it's the structure of it is like that whatever, like I am in need of I'm in desperate need of the good that you have already like given me. It's not like that what you will give me, it's what you have already like bestowed upon me. And it's so beautiful because it's like there's such certainty in that Allah has already bestowed like good on us, and we're just like we just need to find it, and we just need to like reach it. It's not like it's already there. And I still remember this, and every time I read this I'm like, it's such a beautiful dua. Like